I think the hardest part of being a creator online is just being authentic. Showing up and showing the genuine version of yourself is such a scary thing to do. So scary that for a long time, and even still to some extent, I don't do it. I've always wanted to be authentic online. I truly believe that if you want to tell your story, not necessarily others, but if you want to tell your story, you need to show up authentically to be able to do that. You can't just show up and show the good sides of the story. You also need to show the bad and the ugly, because that is what makes your story. Every good movie always has that element of conflict in it, the turning moment where you don't know if the character's gonna make it or not. Those moments in your life where you're down in the pits, that's part of your story too, and it is potentially some of the most compelling stuff in there. For me though, I didn't feel like anyone cared for a long time. I think that's why I tried to create so many different kinds of content. Back when I was in high school and I first got a camera, I actually made a couple of narrative short films. They were nothing special, but that was kind of my first taste into actually telling stories. After that, I kind of went the classic route, did a bit of videography here and there, and mostly just spent time trying to learn how to actually use my camera, because up until that point, I didn't really know what manual settings were or anything like that. And I'm super thankful for that time because it definitely taught me how to compose a lot of my shots, how to frame stuff, how to use light. There was a lot of stuff that you just have to learn by making a lot of mistakes, and that was my kind of time for that. Then a couple of years back, I decided that I wanted to make content. You know, I wanted to get into this, but I think at the time I was getting into it for the wrong reasons. I wanted to do it purely because I wanted to get famous. That's why I cared about it. I just wanted to get that validation and of course that money as well. So I ended up trying a few different styles of content. I did some gaming, some cooking. There was even a short stint of like tech content in there that I've mentioned before, where I went full send into making that. And like I committed, and I slowly realized that I didn't enjoy making those kinds of content. But then kind of through some self-reflections and some videos I saw online, I realized that I wanted to tell stories. And I kind of realized that I had to tell my story because it wasn't really anyone else around that I could tell their story. And part of me, I guess, was excited to do that. I have a background in doing a lot of stage productions like theater sports, improv, even being in a couple of musicals. So the idea of being on stage, even if it's an internet stage, really excites me. I love performing. I love capturing an audience's attention and making them feel emotions. That's such a powerful thing to be able to do. And I wanted to be able to do that through my videos. So I tried to do that. And I tried to do it in the way that I had traditionally learnt to make films. And that meant sitting down and just writing a bunch of stuff and kind of scripting out like you would a movie. And I don't think that's inherently wrong for everyone, but that did kind of create a few issues for me where I found that the more I scripted stuff, the less it sounded like me and the more it sounded like the version of me I wanted to be. And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be something more than you are now, but it was not that. It was more someone different, a different version of me that subconsciously I felt that the internet would want to accept. I didn't think they'd want this goofy, weird side of me as well. They wanted the more serious, thoughtful Sky. I was so wrong about that. Because at the end of 2024, I finally had some time to do some self-reflection. And I actually went and asked my friends, I was like, what do you think my content is missing? And the number one thing that all my friends said was, you're not being yourself in it. There's some elements of Sky in your videos, but not all of them. And that I feel like I have these epiphanies in life, and most of the time they're not of my own doing, they're actually because other people influence me and put these thoughts in my head. But I had this moment where I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, I am just turning these videos into like a different version of me. There's still elements of me in it, but it's not me. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be me. But oh man, being yourself in content is so hard. I think there's three like big overarching things that I struggled with, whether I knew it or not, that caused me to not be myself on camera. These all kind of relate to each other, but the first one was just simply overthinking everything. When I would sit down to script my content, I'd write a first draft, then I'd write a second draft, and a third one, and a fourth one, and a fifth one, and you get the idea. I would just keep chopping and condensing down and changing the words. And by the time I finished with that script, hey, it might have been good, but it wasn't how I probably would have actually sounded. And even when I went out shooting, there'd be times where I'd be trying to read these scripts and I'd be like, this isn't me, but for the video to work, I still need to say it that way. And then this process would repeat in the editing stage. I'd sit down to edit and I'd read my script and I'd go, oh, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, take those out. And I'd essentially gut all my films and kind of have to piece them back together. And it's why a lot of my videos end up shorter than I wanted them to be, because I would start off with this great idea, you know, have these initial thoughts that are quite good, but then I would just cut so much out of that. I just overthink everything. And I know I'm not alone in this process of trying to create and trying to not overthink everything. But why do we overthink so much stuff? Why do we tend to overanalyze? I think it's the fear of being judged. And those are my two other things, fear and judgment, because they so much go hand in hand with each other. Putting yourself out online is putting yourself essentially out to dry, if that's the right term to use, because you're exposing yourself to the entire internet. Some of that internet, and I'm lucky enough to have interacted with them, is really lovely. Some of that internet though is kind of awful, but you still have to put yourself out there for all of it. And eventually you will manage to find your audience, but there is still so many eyeballs that could see your content. And honestly, it feels like every single one of them is gonna judge you. Even down to like, if your family members or your friends see your stuff, I feel like, oh, please don't watch it. Like, that's so awkward. I don't want you to see this because it's, you know, I'm overthinking it. It's just like this whole process. And it just freaks you out so much. And so you either end up making the videos that you don't want to make, or you just don't make anything at all. I've been in both those camps. Even in the past like 2 months, I've experienced both those things of not wanting to make videos and taking the video ideas that I had and turning them into something that I didn't want to. The good news is you don't always have to feel this way. Well, maybe you will always feel this way, but I found some kind of helpful ways that have helped me deal with this. They're still a work in progress, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but they're things that are starting to help me so much more with actually being authentic online and showing up to the camera like this as myself and not this other version of me. And if people don't accept me, so what? But here's the ways that I have been trying to deal with this so far. Now, take the ones of these that work and throw the rest in the bin, because I'm me and you're you, and we are different people. And that means that what works for me may not also work for you. But hopefully this helps. The first thing, just stop scripting as much. With my last few videos, I have essentially dot pointed them. I'll show you, this is what this video looks like. It is a single piece of paper. It has got notes on the back, but that is essentially it. There is not much to that. Whereas my previous videos, they would have been pages and pages in my Notion. But by doing this, when I sit down to record, I still know what I want to talk about. Like, I know that I want to express to you that I don't want you to script as much. But rather than having every line written down piece by piece, I can kind of speak off the cuff. Now, you do have to trust your intuition, and it probably will take you a few extra takes to get this right, but it means you're talking as you and not that other version. It's kind of a weird thing, and I'm still figuring out how to do this and also still shortlist everything, but I think it's starting to work. The second thing is just consistency. I feel like there is such a lesson for creators in being consistent. It will literally fix like 90% of your problems, because the thing is, the more you do something, the better you get at it. It's just basic math, that's how it works. I shot for like almost a decade, and I'm getting half decent at it now. My stuff actually is starting to look good. That's just because I consistently, well, mostly consistently worked at it over time. And it's the same thing with anything else. Overthinking, the more you do stuff and the more you consistently create, well, one, you don't have time to overthink it, but also you learn how to stop overthinking it as well. So just keep creating and creating and creating. Don't burn yourself out, but as you can and as you feel comfortable to, just keep making stuff. And if something's bad, that's fine. Move on to the next thing. I prefer to think of it as moving forwards rather than dwelling on the mistakes you've made in the past. Number 3 is just being present. I kind of found that when I was shooting some of my older videos last year and previously, I would go into this like zone of focus when I was making them and lock in like so hard on making sure like the shots were good, the lighting was good, everything had to be perfect. But life isn't perfect. I don't talk perfectly normally. Like, I don't have a script memorized whenever I go speak to my friends. There will be ums, there will be ahs, there will be breaths. So you kind of need to learn when that camera switches on rather than trying to go into this perfect presenter mode. Think of it like you're talking to a friend. When I'm talking to the camera, I'm trying to talk to it like it's my friend on FaceTime. And sure, they won't ever respond when I'm actually talking, but think of it like you're trying to tell them a story from your day. You're just sharing stuff with a friend, not trying to speak to a mass of people out there. Because at the end of the day, there's only one other person watching this video, and that's you. You're the one watching it. So all I'm really doing is speaking to you. I'm not speaking to hundreds and thousands of people. It's kind of a cool way to think about it like that, and it almost makes this less intimidating to some extent, that is. And number 4, which is something I did way too late in the game, is make sure you reflect on what you are creating. In this cycle of algorithm-driven content, especially in the short form world, it is so easy to keep producing and producing and producing. And I've done this, and don't actually think about whether you're enjoying what you're making or it's actually you in the stuff that you are making. So taking that time every couple of videos to look back and be like, hey, is this meeting my goals? Does it sound like me in the content? And is it what my friends would see if they were hanging out with me? Because everything moves so fast these days with content, it is so easy to lose yourself in that. And the moment you lose yourself, the moment that authenticity goes out the window as well. All that advice is all well and good, but I think sometimes you also need a bit of encouragement. That's what this section of the video is. And partially I'm speaking to that younger version of me, the one that was still trying to find their voice and figure out how to do all of this. And I'm also speaking to you, wherever you are at the moment. Because if you're watching this video, you're probably going along a similar journey to me. This might be the most important thing I say in all of this, but hear me out, okay? Who you are is perfectly fine. You don't need to change yourself when you come onto the internet to be someone you're not. Sure, it might take you a while, like it's taking me to actually find your audience. But those people are out there. Just like I found a bunch of amazing creative friends this year, I think in the future I will also find my audience as well. But I'm never gonna find that audience if I keep pretending to be these people that I'm not. The only way I'm gonna find that is by being myself. And that's what you gotta do too. You gotta show up authentically in every video that you can. The good, the bad, the ugly. I think it should all be part of the story, not just the really pretty parts. I know it can suck sometimes, but hey, who said this whole creator thing was gonna be easy?